What's good, guys? So in this video I'm going to be going through my personal top 10 list of characters I would like to see introduced into Galaxy of Heroes this year from the Star Wars movies only. So this is none of the TV shows, none of the comics, none of the video games, just purely movies. I actually will be doing lists on the TV shows and video games and so on as well, but there was just too many characters and too many ones that I really would like to see included in the game were just going to get excluded from the list as a result. So the best way to do it was break it into categories. And I also want your opinions. I've actually written out a survey which I'll include in a pinned comment below as well as in the description, where I'd like to see you guys submit your top 10 lists. And once I've got enough submissions, probably once I've gone through the whole series, I'll tally up the results and I'll actually do a video covering your top 10 once I've rounded up and figured out who really is the most in-demand character that the community would like to see in Galaxy of Heroes this year. So let's get on with this video, guys. Let's do this. In at number 10, the Knights of Ren. Admittedly, we haven't seen them a great deal in the movies, however there's a huge backstory that's kind of slowly being fleshed out amongst other media. We know the Knights of Ren are a group of Force users who have their own ideology, Kylo going on to become their leader. Following the events of episode 8, they went on to become his bodyguards and have a sort of affiliation with First Order while not officially being First Order ranked officers or any sort. So there's room to create a second faction using Kylo Unmasked leadership, perhaps reworking the original Kylo, the masked version, to give him a leadership specifically for that faction. Could be even the Supreme Leader version could perhaps have a synergy with them. Anything along those lines. We'll be able to create a second faction out of these characters. Admittedly, we don't know a lot about them, but I don't really think we need to include them in the game, considering there's characters like Colonel Stark in the game who nobody really even knew existed. It's definitely a group I'd like to see come to the game, all of the members in fact if possible, although even if they just bring one for now as a bodyguard, sort of like a royal guard type character for Kylo, something like that would be pretty sweet. An attacker who can also defend, act as a tank, sacrifice himself for their leader of their ideology would be pretty sweet. In at number 9, I'm going with, yes, believe it or not, Jar Binks. I don't know, some people are gonna probably just close this list immediately now, but hear me out. I think what we really need at the moment in this game is an injection of some entirely new factions, and bringing Jar Jar in would allow them to bring in Gungans, which should hopefully mix things up. I mean, they battle separatist droids, so we've got another direct counter there, some sort of other interactions. I think you could have a lot of fun with Jar Jar's kit as well. You could make him a fairly clumsy RNG based character. And a way to kind of offset the RNG would perhaps be to have some sort of crazy damage scale. So there's really a lot of room where you could tinker around and have a little bit of fun with his kit. With the Clone Wars returning this year, I wouldn't be surprised if he does appear, because he's probably one of the bigger named characters that's still not in the game from that TV show and from that era of Star Wars. In at number 8, the memorable Babu Frick. I think he'd be great fun to add into the game. He's able to reprogram droids. We got so many droids in the game, so you could have him either boost ally droids or shut down enemy droids, or both. Perhaps he's a bit like Wat Tambor in the sense that he's got some sort of skill tech move, and he's got an offensive one and a defensive one. That would be pretty sweet. As for factions, I mean, it doesn't really need a specific faction, does it? You could pretty much just use him as a utility character. Sort of in the way that you can use Jawa Engineer to plug and play in droid teams to get additional speed boosts and such. I just think he'd be a really fun character, and I think a lot of people would like him. He'd be incredibly small on the screen, so that might be a problem, but still, I would really like to see him added to the game. At number 7, Crime Lord Darth Maul, a character that would have so many faction possibilities, whether it be as a leader for scoundrels, bounty hunters, smugglers, as part of being a crime lord, whether he has some sort of synergy with Ezra as part of the Rebels TV show, whether we bring in a Mandalorian tag and he gets some synergy there due to his leadership of Mandalore at one point. There's all sorts of possibilities for Darth Maul. No longer just purely a Sith, It would bring a whole new realm of usability to Darth Maul, a very, very popular character within Star Wars, and his current version in the game is really, really quite limited, a very dated kit, and just really not that usable outside of one or two little teams. In at number 6, one of my favourites, Lando Calrissian. A veteran Lando would be a great character to add into the game. I'd love to see Chewie, his veteran character, also get a rework or at least get the Resistance tag, considering he's stuck around with them. But with Lando arriving in episode 9, it's about time his character came into the game as well. Have a little collection of veteran characters along with bringing another Resistance character that's actually unique. At the minute, it feels like most of the Resistance characters are just rehashed of the same character. We've got 3 Reys now, including the new one that's on her way. We got 2 Finn. We're no doubt going to get a second Poe. So you see what I mean? There's not really a lot of unique characters. Bringing Lando in, I think would be pretty sweet. He's clearly working with the Resistance in this movie. It's another pilot as well. So yeah, I'd really, really like to see Lando come in and just add a little bit of spice and a new alternative to the Resistance faction. In at number 5, the villain of the Solo movie, Dryden Voss. This is a character I'd absolutely love to see come to the game. I really enjoyed his character in the movie. It would give us another leader for like the scoundrels, bounty hunter factions. He's the public face of the crime syndicate Crimson Dawn. He's a good fighter himself, and I think it would really just help spice some of these factions up. We didn't really get many characters at all for the Solo movie, and that's quite disappointing because there were some pretty cool ones. Dryden himself being one of the most popular that never actually arrived in the game. I'd look forward to seeing the animation of where his face flares up, the red striations that appear whenever he's enraged. And obviously any synergy with Kira or with Crime Lord Darth Maul would be an added bonus. So while it seems unlikely now, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we'll finally see him in 2020. In at number 4, another character who's a particular favourite of mine is Saw Gerrera. Now, I know he's a character that's predominantly been featured more in other media rather than the movies, however he's a character that's just very interesting for me. He's seemingly always torn between right and wrong, and tends to veer on doing anything necessary in order to better his cause, which is usually leaning towards the light side, although in honesty, when it comes down to getting what he wants done, he's not afraid to bend the rules and really lean towards the dark side. So he's a character I'd really like to see come into the game. He'd probably, if we're going towards the later part of Saw's life, he'd be more of a neutral character than a light character at this point, because if the rebels or whoever got in his way, he would take them out too. He's really not beyond doing anything possible to get his way. Along with a rebel synergy, a younger one could perhaps have a republic synergy. Although there is also the possibility for his own neutral faction of more or less terrorists who do whatever they've got to do to take down the bad guys. So yeah, I would absolutely love to see Saw added to the game. In at number 3, Tobias Beckett. Another character much like Saw Gerrera who often flip-flopped between right and wrong. Another potential leader for the Solo faction good guys, which would be pretty sweet having some sort of synergy with young Han. There were other members of Tobias's crew that could also get added to the game at some stage. And let's face it, who doesn't want Tallahassee in the game? Much like Dryden, Tobias is one of the bigger characters in the movie that somehow never made it into Galaxy of Heroes, much to the confusion of everybody. I'm pretty sure I, along with a lot of people, were really expecting him to arrive as one of the earlier characters, or perhaps the legendary character for this movie, and absolutely nothing sat here right now in January 2020. We still don't have any sight of him. I'd really like to see him added for the sake of the smuggler or scoundrel faction. He's just a great character with good depth, good attacker, potential leader. There's so much you could do with him. At number 2, and I imagine most people's number 1 in fact, is Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker. Where in the world is this character? How can you have a Star Wars game and not have Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker remotely anywhere near being included in the game? I actually thought he would be added to the game much earlier. I figured when the Hero's Journey stuff started, we were going to see a 6 to 12 month rollout of all the incarnations of Luke. And yet here we are in 2020, like 2 or 3 years after Commander Luke Skywalker arrived in the game, and we still don't have Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker. This is absolutely baffling to me. I don't really know what the holdup is. Yes, he's a big money character, and they're likely holding him off for a rainy day, However, the game is like 4 years old now. Surely he should have arrived by this stage. If this carries on any longer, we'll end up with the hermit version of Luke from episode 8 before we even get the Jedi one, which is crazy. I'm surprised we don't have a pilot version of him, or at least bring Red 5 in for the Commander Luke Skywalker to pilot. But yeah, I just don't know what the holdup is for Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker, and hopefully we'll finally see him this year. A few honourable mentions before we get to number 1. Quinlan Vos, yes, he actually appeared in a brief, like 1 second or 2 second clip of episode 1. I'd also like to see the inclusion of some of these First Order Stormtroopers. We have the Flame Trooper missing, the Riot Control Troopers missing, the Jet Trooper. Any of those would be a great boost to the teams. And lastly, General Pride from episode 9, who I feel would be a great boost to the First Order. And finally, at number 1, my favourite character in all of Star Wars, Darth Vader Mustafar Edition. I want the Jedi Temple Anakin, if you want to call him that. That's the character I would like to see added. A character that would give a huge boost to not only the Sith faction, but the Empire faction, which is in desperate need of a great leader and damage dealer. Pretty much all of the Empire characters at this stage have incredibly dated kits. They don't really pose a threat to any other faction in the game outside of the really low tier ones. I mean, you can use like Palpatine, for example, to beat like calf teams and stuff like that. So you really don't see them anywhere except Territory Wars and Grand Arena, clearing up the lower tier stuff. Bringing in this version of Anakin / Darth Vader, whichever they want to call him, should really revamp everything. This is Anakin in his prime form. This is the most dangerous version of Anakin and Vader, the one that Palpatine feared. I wouldn't be surprised if they did have this plan for this year, because we have the Clone Wars TV show coming, which is pretty much going to take us right up to the edge of episode 3 where Anakin fell. Without a doubt, this would end up being some sort of epic confrontation. They'd probably release Chancellor Palpatine first, and perhaps even episode 3 Obi-Wan Kenobi, some characters like that which would all get pulled in. But I think this is a character that should be added to the game at some stage, because the Empire are desperately in need of something to give them a serious boost. So that's it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed my list. Be sure to check the pinned comment below or the description box where there is a survey for you to put in your top 10, as I mentioned in the intro, and I'll make an entire video based on that shortly. Stay tuned, because there are other areas of Star Wars that I will pull characters from for some additional top 10s. Be sure to like and subscribe to my channel, and until next time, you know the deal, guys. We out of here.